Thank you very much. We're on to our last of our presentations today. And last but not least, we've already mentioned that he was one of the sponsors for our first ever Labs engagement, and looking forward to continuing that journey with Damon in his new role as the acting CEO for Service New South Wales. We've heard a lot about private enterprise, but what does a digital transformation and disruption mean as it pertains to government services and what that means as a citizen consuming those services? So without further, let me introduce Damon to talk about what that means for Service New South Wales. Thanks, Damon.
Sorry, we run out here and grab the microphone, but we're a little behind schedule, so we'll need to sort of motor through, and unfortunately we won't have time for other questions at the end. I've still got two hats sort of perched on my head at the moment, which basically just means I can't quite see where I'm going. But my day job is the Government Chief Information and Digital Officer for New South Wales Government, and at the moment I'm over as the acting CEO for Service New South Wales. So it'll give me a chance to maybe tell you what we're doing from two different perspectives. I'll start with where is New South Wales going, and then you can really kind of look at that through the eyes of Service New South Wales that plays a key part in really making that happen. I've only been in government for about 18 months, so I really hadn't paid too much attention to government until I joined, and I'd kind of assumed it was this nice, singular, neat and tidy thing called the New South Wales State Government, and when you get inside and realise that it's actually not like that, and it's actually a couple of hundred entities of all different varying shapes and sizes, from the Department of Health and 150,000 practitioners through to the botanical gardens and everything in between. So when we talk about digital transformation, when we talk about customer centricity, it takes on a bit of a different meaning than maybe it has in the private sector. So one of my first jobs was to put in place a digital government strategy for New South Wales, and we landed that in May this year. It really calls out three areas where New South Wales wants to have significant impact. The first is around customer service, and I'll circle back on that when I talk more about Service New South Wales. But it's an area that New South Wales Government, I think, has really pulled away from the pack and set the benchmark for certainly governments in our jurisdiction, and I think is largely looked at as an international reference case for how you can really use customer centricity to drive different outcomes for government. The second area, if you've had a chance to listen to Minister Dominello at all, you'll catch that infection that we have for everything to do with data. Government spends an enormous amount of money. We have an enormous amount of resource that we try to deploy against very, very important issues across the state. Data really, I think, is the key that's going to determine how well we deploy those resources in the future. And we're doing an awful lot to say, how do we really unlock the potential in that data? How do we safely and responsibly share that data across those couple of hundred organisations and then out into the NGO sector, the private sector and citizens? And how do we, having shared that data, really make sure we've got the skills to turn that data into insight, and importantly to turn those insights into impact through policy change and through different service delivery. So an awful amount of opportunity there for us, and we're going to release probably the first big step forward in that space in December, which is the New South Wales data ecosystem. So watch this space. The third area we want to have impact is the internal operation of government. So we talk about how do we be digital on the inside, not just digital on the outside, and there's a huge amount of efficiency and effectiveness opportunity to apply digital to the way that government does what it does. So three areas that we really want to have impact, critically four enablers for us to have that impact. The technology platforms that need to underpin that are critical, as many people in this room would understand. Cybersecurity, the rapidly changing risk profile and trust profile that we operate in is a more and more critical issue, not just for industry, but for New South Wales Government as well. So we're really doubling down our approach there. The legislation that underpins the way that government operates was not fit for purpose. We needed to do a big sweep across many acts and many parts of legislation to remove all of those historical impediments to digital transformation that really made no more sense anymore. So, requiring people to physically sign documents, requiring things to be advertised in newspapers, requiring things to be physically delivered in hand. We've gone through and really removed a whole lot of those impediments. But the fourth enabler, I think actually the most important and really the pivot to how we get to a conversation like this, is the way that we go about delivering change. A lot of really great work going on across New South Wales. But if you look at the the way the vast majority of the dollars are being mobilised, particularly around technology-enabled change, it is still largely a waterfall-based delivery model. Now, we still have long lead times to unlock funding. We have very traditional methods to delivering a lot of that change. It carries all the risk that we all know goes with that. It means that our time to impact and our time to benefit can be multi-years in certain cases. And it means you sit there crossing your fingers that you really do have the right plan, you really do have the right assumptions, that it really is going to solve the problems that your customers ultimately need solved when it goes out the door. And so actually the biggest opportunity I think we've really got to change the performance of New South Wales when it comes to digital, to change the impact of the 2.7 billion a year we spend around technology and digital before you look at the major change program. The single biggest lever we've got there is the way that we build change, and that pivot from a very traditional waterfall-oriented way of mobilising change to one that is all based around lean, agile, small units with the fabric to enable the collaboration across the sector between those units. That's really what we're about. There's a big piece of that that's cultural, there's a huge piece of that that's leadership. A lot of that is mechanisms and has implications for talent. And we're very, very much at the start of that journey, I think. If you look across government, there's some areas that are a little bit ahead. And one of the things I love about government is any topic you think of, you're going to find a pocket of brilliance. But our opportunity is really to make that pervasive across across that enormous workforce that makes up the public sector that serve all of you. So how does Service New South Wales come into this story? Well, when you think about that first priority of delivering a better and better customer experience, Service New South Wales is really the flagship initiative in New South Wales for doing that. We went through our pivot about 5 years ago from a product-centric, service-centric organisation to a customer-centric organisation. 5 years ago, if you wanted to deal with New South Wales government, you kind of need to understand how we're organised, and you go to one of 400 different branded agency-specific shop fronts, or you call one of 1,000 different phone numbers, or you go to one of 1,000 different websites. And Service New South Wales has been all about flipping that around and saying, well, no, actually, we're going to build from the customer back. We're going to provide the customer with a single one-stop shop for government services. It's going to be digital first, but it's going to be an omni-channel experience that's supported by both physical network and points of presence across the state, and also a channel where you can call us as well. And we're obviously adding all of the subtle variations in between that you'd expect. So it's been a tremendous success, and we've gone from dead last in the customer satisfaction states in Australia and New Zealand to very, very clearly first in only 5 years. So I think it's an absolutely amazing achievement. So you then say, so where to from here? Everyone else is kind of looking at that and starting to try and emulate that, which is a great compliment to us, I think. The opportunity for us is, we're only partway there. There's still an awful lot of things that you'd like to do with government that you can't come to that one-stop shop to do. When you do come to work with us, we do a wonderful, wonderful job at meeting the need that you have, but we don't really have a holistic relationship-based servicing model such that we can really understand you and the totality of your dealings with government and help you across all of those other needs that we can anticipate for you rather than you needing to come back later. So, we've got some horizons of growth on us. And when we look at the way that we've got ourselves to here, it's been, as all good startups do, through an awful lot of blood, sweat and tears and passion and hard work that we've scrambled ourselves to this point. When we look at what got us to here and is it going to get us to our next stage of growth, we're really realising we need something very different sitting in the centre of our organisation to underpin the way that we do change. And so we're recently going through a process of resetting the business model of Service New South Wales. We're pivoting at the heart of that from a project-centric and very vendor-dependent way of delivering change to a lean and agile product-centric organisation. We're right at the start of that, but when we thought about how do we make that shift and what are the right ways to step into it, we had an opportunity that we thought really suited a partnership with Pivotal Labs. So Easy to Do Business is one of the government's flagship programs. If you try and set up a new cafe, small bar, restaurant in New South Wales, it can take you up to 18 months to do that. You deal with all 3 tiers of government, 50 different agencies, 60 different forms, none of those things lined up. And as a state, we have priorities. So actually, we want to be a great state to do business in. We want to grow jobs through people creating businesses here. So Easy to Do Business has found a way to bring that 18 months down to 3 months to start with. By really looking across all of that different regulation, all that different process, and really redesigning that around the customer. But we're just getting started, and we've said, well, we've got two things we want to do here. One is we want to build a fantastic digital experience to support that Easy to Do Business program. The second thing is we want to build capability that we haven't traditionally had as Service New South Wales. And by partnering with Pivotal Labs, we believe this is a great way for us to achieve both of those. So we kick off our scoping, I think literally, Kylie, tomorrow. Okay, so this is, thanks for organising this so we can give that a good cheer. But it's, and we're already thinking about, to Lockie's point, how do you create a capability? I'm very, very confident we're going to create a capability and establish a really, really high-performing product team. How do we now start to then think about proactively how we're going to permeate that and propagate that? What are the things we've got to do from the ground up, and what are the blockers that we've really got to sort from the top down? And there's a lot of them. You think about the way that government finances the way that we do what we do. It guides people unconsciously down a very traditional path of delivery. So working with Treasury to say, actually, we're going to need to rethink this and find a way to bring these funding models in line with the way that we want to deliver change. So it's a very exciting journey, and I've had the privilege of working with Lockie and the team and to kind of have a spin at this. What Lockie, in his modesty, didn't and probably couldn't say was, we sent a team of really, really good people over to San Francisco. What we got back was, I think, to this day, the highest performing product team that Macquarie has, and that was a 4-month transformation. I know when I called the guys up and said, look, we're going to have to bring you home at some point. We can only kind of hide the costs from the finance folks so long. The team that we sent over were very, very different from the team that went back. And we had to go to great pains to say, well, how do we bring you back and enable you to keep everything that you've gained here? So the capability uplift, I think, is the thing that ultimately matters to organisations far, far beyond the specific project or product that you're going to be trying to build. Anyway, hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense as to where New South Wales is going, gives you a bit of a sense as to where Service New South Wales sits in that, and frankly why lean, agile product delivery is so absolutely critical. Like I said, we're 2.7 billion a year, plus another 5 billion in capital projects in the pipeline. If we can change the effectiveness of that spend 5%, 10% through working in much more contemporary, lean, smart, customer-led ways, then the impacts of that are profound. I will go out there and say, actually, I think the dividend is much, much greater than that. The ability to make sure that we're building the right things and getting that value out there as early as we possibly can. If we can push that through government, then I think all of us will benefit from that. But I think our plan is by sort of end of first quarter next year, I reckon we'll have the first 4 teams sort of in place and humming in this way that we're aiming for, and certainly by the end of next calendar year, I'd like Service New South Wales to be starting to stand out as a bit of an exemplar within government, certainly to start with, around how we can really make lean and agile work to great effect.
Look, I really appreciate, Damon, you coming in for both being the sponsor for us in our first engagement and really looking forward to kicking off the project with the team now. So again, thank you very much and looking forward to the journey. Please thank Damon Rees.